It is time to install our control horns. And what I'm using is just this little plastic control horn. And I also use linkage stops on mine. I like to be able to, if there's any trim that's going to be required, I like to do that mechanically rather than doing it through the radio. So this allows me to do that. The most important thing in positioning of your control horn, and I already have my control rods attached to the arms on my servos, and they're in the neutral position, is I set up I mark the location of my control horn. I just lay the rod across where it's going to be protruding through the linkage stop. Let me get my hand out of the way so that you can see it. But I just lay this across the top, and with the servos in the neutral position, I want to get this rod straight back from the servo, straight back to the elevon. And you want your pivot point, of your control horn to be as close to the hinge on your elevon as possible, because that will make it more efficient. So with the control rod across the top of it, pivot point as close to the pivot point of the elevon as possible, I just take a marker and mark my location. Okay, and I've already marked my location. I've got just a little roll of painter's tape under here to add support while I put a little, cut a little slot in the elevon where the control horn is going to go. So we will go ahead and make our little cut here, and you want to make it, as straight as possible. You want your control horn to be completely perpendicular to your hinge point. That way you won't have any binding on it. Okay, so I've got my slot cut. I'm going to take my control horn and move this out of the way and just do a quick dry fit of the control horn. Make sure that we're lined up okay. There we go. So there's my control horn. It is, there we go, perpendicular to the hinge point, and my pivot point on my control horn is right over top of the pivot point of the elevon. So now that I've got that set, and I'm going to do one of these on camera, and then I'll do one of them off camera, and then I want you guys to go ahead and finish yours up at the same time. So let me go ahead and pull this out. And once the glue gets set up, then I'll cut off the excess below, because as you can see, it comes out pretty far. I don't know what the distance is on this. Yeah, that's 11 millimeters, and of course the thickness of our foam is only 5, so I'm going to be cutting off about 5 millimeters of the stem on the control horn once the glue sets up. But I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to take my handy dandy foam tack, and I'm going to put some underneath the flat plate that's going to be touching the top of the elevon. And then I'm going to put some on the stem, because I want some of the glue to go through and contact the interior of the foam. That looks good. Have a scrap piece of foam available so that you can clean up any excess. And then we're just going to slide it right through, just like we did with our dry fit. Make sure that the little platform on the control horn is contacting flush. And then just take your scrap foam and clean up your excess glue. That wasn't too bad. Okay, so now we just have to wait for this glue to set up. And then I will trim the underside of the control horn and then attach my control rod. Obviously this is way too long. I'll be trimming it back over here. And tighten everything down. On this plane you're going to want your elevon to be in the neutral position. You won't need any up elevon like a lot of these park jets have. This will climb out just fine on launch with the elevon in the neutral position. So there you go. We're done with this step. I'll come back and show you the finished results once everything is dry. Alright, I have trimmed up my control rods and attached those to my linkage stops on my control horns. I've got my receiver connected. Everything seems to be working fine. So we are finished with the installation of our control horns. All I have left to do is wire up my micro FPV camera. This airframe will be ready for its maiden flight. So, this concludes our build tutorials for this plane. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. So, go out and build one. Go fly it. We'll see you in the air.